And that was another fine tune coming at you from WLDO Radio, 1776 AM. Coming at you from Palmer, Alaska. That was Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. Hey, listen, Alaska, how about you, America? You happy with the way things are going right now? No way, Ray. So here's what you gotta do. You gotta trust the wolf on this now. There's the gray wolf coming at you from Alaska, and you listen to what we got to say here. You don't want to be L7, you gotta find better blood. You like the way the governor's doing, you like the way the president's doing, you like the way any of them are doing? I don't think so. We can do better than this. So what you gotta do, look for better blood. You can't find them? Probably because you'd have better blood yourself. And you better throw your hat in the ring. Now listen to the wolf on this. We ain't got time for games anymore. Our country's nearly gone. If you believe like I do, then you better start thinking real serious about who you vote for from now on. Now we're gonna spin some wax for you. There's the Bruce Walden Show coming at you. Take it away, Bruce. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Bruce Walden Show, the show that dares to ask the question, can we just be honest? And hats off to the Gray Wolf who introduced us today. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to follow, don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe. If you can support what we're doing, you know what? We're going to have to get the truth out there, folks. The truth hurts a lot of feelings. And I've had people recently that I've had to give them a dose of the truth, and somebody said, well, if we take it easy on people, we've done that, and we've lost our state, we've lost our country. Now it's time for us to get real straight with people and start telling the truth. I'd like to give a shout out to AT Publishing and Printing. If you're in a campaign or anything else and you need signs done, go to AT Publishing and Printing. They're on Abbott Road after it turns into Abbott off of Diamond. I'm not getting a dime for saying that, but they treated me really well, and because they did, I said, I'll mention you on my show, and they're really good folks. They'll work with you, and trust me, they're good folks. They'll treat you right over there, and they do a real good job. Okay, so I'm going to have to back up here just a little bit and find my place because my computer decided it wanted to jump ahead. So while we're talking about that, tonight we're going to be talking about defense, the defense of the country, the defense of this nation, the defense of our state. And I'm going to jump through some things because, frankly, I'm getting kind of tired of hearing myself talk about the stuff that I did. But there are some things that you need to do because I have to establish my credentials, if you will. Okay, I'm a career soldier. But like I said, I'm here to point out the truth. So if the truth hurts, turn this show off quickly because it's going to hurt your feelings. Now listen, not everybody's meant to be in the military. And I respect that. In fact, in one of the books that I wrote, they have, if you read the books, you say, wow, if this happened, this could really happen. This money would be there, and it's not taking up tax money. And they realize the best thing we could do is have all of our kids, when they graduate high school, serve in some kind of, not military, but uniform service to get the rudiments of discipline and self-respect, that kind of stuff. So they have a whole bunch of different corps, like a forestry corps and that kind of thing. But remember, it's not paid for by taxes. And the reason why is because we graduate, I think I read 200, I forget, it's a pretty huge number of young kids coming out of high school every single year. About 250,000. Well, we don't have room for all of them in the military. So that's what they do in this book. Anyway, all three of my older brothers were prior service. Bob served in Vietnam, Jerry served in Germany, and Glenn was in Hawaii. He got in the Marines just in time to miss Vietnam. He got there in 1973. But as they were all three prior service, they joined the National Guard in Kempton, Indiana. Trust me, I got out of there as soon as I was 18 and could do it on my own. But I grew up in Indiana, and they were all in the same, it was an artillery unit, so they were all in the same battery. And I thought that'd be cool if I joined the National Guard and went out there with them. So that was my first time in the military, was with the National Guard. And I went through the 13 Bravo course down at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Came back 13 Bravo cannon cockers, we used to say. Artillerymen, artillery crewmen, cannon crewmen as we called it. And training, we used the M109 A1 howitzer, and the 105 millimeter howitzer was what we had in our unit. The old one from World War II with the split trails in the back. That was kind of cool to actually work on a gun that old, but that's not the point. I was a 13 Bravo, but I realized I didn't like cleaning howitzers because it takes a lot to do that, and they get really dirty. on the inside and out. So I said, I'm going to go in the regular army because my brothers, they all resigned from the National Guard because if you were prior service, you could try it for a year and you could just resign if you didn't care to do it. And they went on about their business. So I was left there in that unit alone, and I joined the regular army, started the very next summer. But before we get too far, when I was in training for 13 Bravo, I was in the mess hall in November of 1979 when they had the radio playing when they announced that the hostages had been taken in Iran, and the Revolutionary Guard had done what they did, and it was horrible. Well, it just so happens that my brother Glenn had divorced. He and his first wife had divorced. She remarried, and the guy she married was Iranian. She was living in Tehran when this happened, which means that my niece Rochelle was living in Tehran when this happened, and she's only about 3 or 4 years old. So she was 4. Vicky brought her home to Glenn and handed her off, got back on the plane, went back over there, and was put in prison, I understand, for about 8 years. So all these things kind of started hitting very close to home with me. Well, the next summer, as soon as I could, I started doing what I could to get back to go regular Army, which I did. And I went active on the 27th of January, 1981, exactly a week after Ronald Reagan raised his hand, and it was a totally different army, and the hostages were free because he wasn't going to put up with that. But because I didn't want to be an artilleryman anymore, I joined and went 11 Bravo infantry, and that's where I served. Wound up in Grenada in 1983, did my little part down there, and came home, and got married. And right after that, January 26, 1984, I got out. And immediately regretted it. So I started working my way back into the Army. But when I reenlisted, I want to go Special Forces, and the recruiter told me they don't want any more 11 Bravos. They got plenty, that we need engineers. So I said, all right, fine. So I enlisted. This is my third time going through AIT under the Brown and Round, the drill sergeant's hats. I went to Fort Leonard Wood and became a 12 Bravo combat engineer. So at this point, I got 3 combat MOSs, and I was only like 22 years old at that time. So I went on, did my little engineer thing, finally got to the Special Forces Qualification Course, or Q course as we call it, in 87, and I graduated September 87 as an 18 Bravo. Now, an 18 Bravo is a Special Forces and weapons sergeant. And I liked it. I had a good time and had a wonderful team, learned a lot about mountaineering and teaching. And that's why I went SF, is because I love to teach. But in 95, I went to the 18 Foxtrot course, which is, we called it ONI, or Assistant Operations. As ONI is Operations and Intelligence, or the Assistant Operations Sergeant, whatever. You come out there, you're an 18 Foxtrot, which is Special Forces Intel. So I went on back to group. That was my favorite job because you get to get inside of people's heads, and I dig that. I retired 2001 on June 30th, 2001, and I went to work at the DMV in Anchorage, and I remember that Tuesday morning, that September, when we were watching TV. My sister Francine called me, and we're watching when the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And I turned to my wife, and I said, that's bin Laden, this is Al-Qaeda, we're at war. And I went to work that day and I said, just to let you know, I have zero interest in this job. I just want to be back with my boys. But I went to the recruiter. They weren't taking me back as a retiree. So I eventually got over and went to Iraq as an outfit with an outfit called Triple Canopy. And that was in the gold rush days of contracting. And we were there to guard the embassy personnel. You don't tell a private, go let yourself be killed so that guy gets to live. That's not how it works in the real world. So there I was, and we were paid well, yeah, but I went there because I wanted to serve my country, and I'd missed my chance. It kind of irks me that when we were attacked on September 11th, my son Roger had not quite reached 5 years of age, and he grew up and fought in that same war as a Ranger. There's a problem when we stretch out a war that long. I lost my friend, a friend of mine, Nate Chapman. We served in the same company in 2 different companies, and 2 different times. And I had a lot of other friends that died over there. I've got a stake in what happened over there. And the way Biden cut and ran like a coward and left our people to die over there, I'm never going to let that go. And shame on you if you do. Whether you support the war or not, it doesn't matter. You don't cut and run the way he did and let our people die. When I left Iraq, I looked around and I said, this is the best military I've ever seen in my life. These young folks here, they're out here. You had young kids, 20, 22 years old, that had been over there several times. Some of them been wounded and just kept going back and going back and going back because the war wasn't over and they refused to quit. So any of you that talk a lot of smack about this younger generation of soldiers, excuse me, I got a bit of a runny nose. You talk about the younger soldiers back then. These are some good troops. Unfortunately, since that time, we have graduated people from our high schools that they aren't fit to fight. More on that in a little bit. When I was stationed up here in Alaska, I was in Charlie Airborne, 4th to 23rd, right over here. That's where I started my active duty career right here. Charlie Airborne, 4th to 23rd. And we had an in-rank inspection every single morning. If Sergeant Davis looked down at your shoes and he couldn't see his face in your boots, you're down there doing push-ups. If he went in your room, we had a room inspection about every morning. If he looked down at the floor and couldn't see the top of your locker, you're down there doing push-ups. You know why? Because if you pay attention to detail like that, that will keep you alive in combat. Now we've got a wash and wear army, and we've got people that complain about that. We got troops now that grow their hair out and look like Sideshow Bob off of The Simpsons, and guys with full beards. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I left Iraq and I came home, and here I was in the civilian world, a world that, frankly, I wasn't that comfortable in. You grow into it. But there's something that we need to discuss, and that you need to understand, and the people in this country need to understand. We have a military, sort of. We did have. Our military only has one job. Do you know what that job is? That job is to win wars. It's not to make you feel good about yourself. It's to win wars. And you know how we do that? By killing the other guy and breaking his toys and keeping him from killing me and my buddies on the right and left. That's how you win wars. You don't win wars by telling guys, you know what, if you feel like a woman today, that's cool. Or telling women, you're a woman, let's hear you roar. You can do anything a man can do, because it's a lie when we say that. Remember I said, can we just tell the truth? Say, Bruce, I know women that can do that job. They can throw on that rucksack. Oh, yeah? Yeah, there might be a couple. Throw on a 100-pound rucksack, walk 20 miles, fight and win a battle, and walk all the way back. Say, Bruce, they don't do that. They got trucks. You sure? I spent an awful lot of time humping a rucksack. It is not the military's job to make you feel good about yourself. And it's not the military's job to help you to affirm yourself. It's the military's job to tear you down to rock bottom, tear you down to your foundation and build a soldier on top of it. Build a Marine, sailor, guardian, airman, whatever, Coast Guardsman on top of that foundation. This business where we have people from all walks of life coming in the military and maintaining those same walks of life, that's got to stop, folks. Now, I had a drill sergeant one time, and he put it this way, he said, I don't see color, I only see one color, that's green. He don't care about the color of your skin, but he said, you're going to soldier. And he trained us as soldiers. This business where we have gender normed our military is going to get your sons and daughters killed. Because no matter how much you want to say it, no matter if you see an Army commercial, I saw this newest Army commercial, they're finally going back to be all you can be. You remember that old commercial, be all that you can be? That was one of the reasons I joined. That was so motivating to me. I wanted to join. I wanted to be all that I could be. We have to think that way, that we're all green. We're not black. We're not white. We're not this. We're not that. We're soldiers first and foremost. You know, the military's job isn't to make you feel good about yourself, but I'm going to tell you, when I was a soldier, I did feel very good about myself. But it wasn't the job of the military to make me feel that way. It just happened to be a happy byproduct. Our military is there to win wars, and anything that distracts them from that purpose, from that mission, must never be allowed. Bush went to seed on us. Obama took over the Army. They threw the Army open for homosexuals to serve openly in the ranks. And I said, that's going to ruin morale. Now, a lot of you just turned off when I said that, but you know what? Deal with it. I know whereof I speak. Now, you got a lot of young soldiers nowadays that'll say, well, I don't care what a man does in his own time. You know what? I wouldn't either if he kept it to himself. But when you go out here parading this stuff in our military, it looks like a drag show, the world's laughing at you. And you know what? No matter what you say, well, I don't care what they think. Well, you'd better start. Because very soon, your sons and your daughters are going to be fighting the Chinese. It's going to happen. Do you think they fear this army? Do you think they fear this country? They respect this country after this clown that we've had in office for the last couple of years? And little by little, he has destroyed the military. Whereas there was a time it was don't ask, don't tell. And basically, as a matter of, hey, if you're a straight guy, that's fine. Keep that to yourself, too. Nobody wants to go to the PX and see you with your tongue down your wife's throat. You're here to soldier. Now they've got it where it's so openly gay. I saw a video of the Marine Corps ball. And these Marines guys dancing with each other very provocatively. Like, man, the whole world's watching and they're just rolling and laughing. Is this the nation that we feared? Is this the nation that we looked up to? Had an Irishman tell me one time when I was in Dublin, said, did you know that Irish folk get down and pray for America every night? And do you know why? I said, why is that? He said, that we know that when America falls, the world falls. America, you've fallen. Wow. There's so much to unpack that I don't know that I can get into it all. But I will say this. You ladies that serve in the military, my second wife is a soldier. She was one of our 71 Lemas when I was in first group. And she jumped out of planes just like I did. In fact, I was on the jump with her when she broke one of her legs. There's a place for everybody to serve. And I tell people like this when people say, well, I was just and they're talking to me as a Green Beret, and it's like, there is no just So if you served in the military, it's like taking a spring out of a Swiss watch. The whole thing breaks. It could be the most insignificant spring. You take that spring out of the finest watch, and it's just a piece of junk. It's a paperweight. You can't take any of the parts out. To put it another way, let's say you're the person that repairs the sewing machines down at the rigger shed, and you don't show up for work, and a parachute doesn't get repaired, and for some reason it falls apart midair, and a guy screams in and smashes into the ground. All of a sudden, that sewing machine repairman is the most important person in your life, isn't he? There is no small job in our military. However, here's something to think about. And Rush asked 4 questions one time. He said, can you have the best army in the world? Rush Limbaugh, for those of you who may not remember. He said, can you have the best military in the world having only men? Yeah, you can. Can you have the best military in the world having only women? No, you can't. If you have an army of only men, do you need women in it to make it better? No. And if you have an army of only women, do you need men to make it better? Yeah, you do. Now, that being said, and I know Rush didn't serve, but that is common sense. But the real truth is this, folks, there's a place for everybody. Ladies, why was it that when you were WACs, WMs, waves, WAFs, what have you, that you wore that uniform with pride? And going on up into the early part of my career, I think the WACs went out of the system in about 77, 78, something like that. But we still had women who were in the ranks who served proudly and looked soldierly like female soldiers. Now, the Army finally got around to getting the uniform right. They got back to the old World War II uniform. In fact, I've written about that in my books. But they put the women in the same uniform as the men, and you look ridiculous. You look like women in drag. Here a few years ago when Obama was president, he tried to take away the Marine Corps' hats, or their covers, and give them the female cover that the women were wearing at the time. And they were making ROTC cadets march around in high heels, men. Obama was trying his best to embarrass our military, and he did it too. He embarrassed us. My son served under him for a little while, and then he served under Trump, but he got out. As you were, let me spin that back. He went active under Obama, right at the very end, served all through Trump, and got out when Biden was, when he was pretending to be president. And he got out because of what they had done to the military. They had destroyed it. My son was, he was going through RASP, which is the Ranger assessment and selection program down at Fort Benning. That's what the old timers called RIP, the Ranger Indoctrination Program, but now it's all at Benning. And he was going through that at the same time as those two first women went through Ranger School. And the same RIs were teaching both schools. And they asked them about those women. They said they're not even coming close to making the standard, not even close. But they had a general there to make sure that they got their Ranger tab. I saw my first female Ranger on post the other day and I almost busted out laughing. And ladies, you can hate me all you want to, but you know what I'm telling you is the truth. Ranger School was so tough that most men wouldn't make it through there. And you're telling me you're just going through there. That's a lie. You're lying. Ranger instructors and all you people that are down there telling us that the women are making the same grade as the men did when Ranger School was still tough, you're lying to us. You congressmen that are allowing it, you're lying to us. There was one congressman who was a Ranger. He went to Fort Benning. He said, I want to see these ladies' green cards. Now, I didn't go to Ranger School, but I do know what a green card is. Everything that you do, they have a little green card, and they keep a record of it. And they've been doing that since Ranger School was established, I think, in the early 50s. And you know what? Mysteriously, those two women's stuff had been shredded. Out of all those years, those are the only ones that were ever shredded. Ain't that strange? You name a Ranger from 1956, you can go down to Ranger School and they still have his green cards. You've been lied to, people. Again, can we just be honest? Now they got women wearing green berets. Guess what the Chinese are doing while we're becoming more and more woke with our military? Guess what they're doing? Guess what? They're teaching their kids to kill your kids. In fact, they start teaching their kids in elementary school how to assemble guns, how to clean guns, how to prepare to kill your children. So are the Iranians. The Russians, they used to do that kind of thing, but frankly, they're so broke they can't do anything. In fact, if you're drafted into the Russian army, you'll serve 4 days in the field. The rest of the time, you hang out in the barracks and mop floors. And I have that on very good authority. That's why they're getting the snot beat out of them by a bunch of farmers in the Ukraine. A, they're not trained before they get there. B, the Ukrainians are defending the homeland. And you say, well, Zelensky's a dirtbag. Yeah, he is. So is Putin. And any of you that are foolish enough and naive enough to think that Putin sent his men in there to save the Ukrainians from Nazism, you're being a blind, naive little fool. Go ahead and hate me all you want to. I know what I'm talking about. I've been to Ukraine. Have you? Looking like a soldier is gone. Discipline is gone. When you got soldiers that are in basic training and they just roll over and say, I refuse to train, and they're chaptered out of the Army, that's happening. You got soldiers that, I'm under stress, and they pull out a stress card. They've gotten rid of the shark attack. That don't exist anymore in the Army. And Marines, you're next. And don't say it won't happen, because you also said that about going co-ed. You also said that when you and the Rangers wore your high and tight haircuts, which made you look like a Marine and made them look like Rangers. You said, we'll never give this up. But you did. And you know why? You know what the excuse was? Oh, it's eccentric. When the enemy saw somebody with a high and tight haircut, they knew that's somebody to be feared. Say, well, yeah, maybe they're undercover. No, they're not undercover. It's not like you're special forces. You're a Marine, you're a Ranger. And there are exceptions. There are times maybe you do have to let it grow out, but not all the time. Looking like a soldier is gone. Spit polish, that stuff's gone. Having uniforms. Man, I remember when I was a young paratrooper over here, we took pride. We'd sit up and watch TV for 2 or 3 hours, spit shining in boots, and took pride in it. There was something about being a paratrooper back in those days. Now I see these paratroopers walk in where I work, guts hanging out over their belt. You have to grease the doorway to get them through there. And they're going to call themselves paratroopers? The world's watching you. United States Army, United States Marine Corps, all of the other branches, they're watching you. And they're laughing right now. This is exactly what the Chinese have been looking for. Say, why are you picking on the Chinese? We'll get into that. Some of you people that voted last year and didn't vote for old Bruce, that's fine. Because let me tell you what was going to happen had I been elected governor. The very first drill in the National Guard, I was going to show up down here at Fort Richardson, and I was going to have an end-ranks inspection. And if you were fat, I was going to put you on the scale. If you didn't make height weight, you're done. You're done. Your entire chain of command was going to get relieved. Then I was going to take who was left, put on a 55-pound rucksack, say, we're going for a 12-miler. Now, I'm 60. I'm a heart attack and quadruple bypass survivor. I'm a COVID survivor, Hep C survivor, and I'm diabetic. And had any of you come out behind me in that ruck march or finished behind 3 hours, you're done. Because I'd rather have a company or a battalion of hard-charging, motivated soldiers than a whole division of dirtbags. You take one dirtbag and put him in a good company and he will destroy morale. I know what I'm talking about. If you can't keep up, you're done. Ladies, don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Say, I know women that can. Yeah, so do I. I had a friend whose daughter, she wanted to join the Army and be an Army medic, which she did. And my friend was a Green Beret like I was, and she joined, his daughter, she joined, and said, I will have to outperform the men to be taken seriously. And she did it. And she admitted, said, you know what, after 8 years, I had to get out. My skeleton was destroyed. You know why? Because, ladies, your skeletons aren't made for that kind of thing. Mine was. I could go out there and do it right now. And I'm old. I'm 60. I'm old as Methuselah's house cat, as Dad used to say. And I could still go out here and do it. Because I was built for that kind of thing. Men were built for that kind of thing. But with some of the men we got nowadays, they're so brittle from sitting and playing video games all the time. By the way, Governor Dunleavy, your constitutional duty to your state is to protect your state. Did you know that the U.S. Constitution says that a governor has the right, and I think the responsibility, that if his state is under attack, that he has the right to call up his militia to respond to the threat in such a time as there can be no delay. When that balloon came floating over Alaska, sir, it was your duty to shoot it down, and you did nothing. You can sit down here in this 25-yard range indoors with a 50 caliber sniper rifle and take headshots and brag about it. You might impress some people, but I was a sniper, sir. Sad. That balloon flew across Alaska. He did nothing. It flew across Canada and the rest of the other states down there. Biden didn't do anything until I had taken all the data that it needed to take and already transmitted it back to Beijing, where his puppet master lives. Then he shot it down. I'm sure Xi said, all right, buddy, go ahead. Okay, so when our people came back from Afghanistan, when we cut and ran away, I asked through Mike Dunleavy's mouthpiece here in the Matsu, I said, were any Alaskans left behind? Because there were thousands of Americans left behind. He said, I don't know. I said, has the question been asked? And his snotty little response to me was, no, because we don't think it's our place to keep track of 720,000 Alaskans. Think about the gall that it took to say that. Let me tell you something, Governor Dunleavy, or any of the rest of you. That's exactly what your job is, to protect Alaskans. That's your first concern. The people and the territorial integrity of the state, and you ain't getting it done. Sorry. I know that hurt a lot of feelings. Yeah, that's the way life goes. Now, I want you to chew on that for a little bit, folks. While you're at it, I think it was Florida the other day that said we are now going to accept gold and silver as currency here in the state. Here we are, armpit deep in gold and silver in the state of Alaska. Would you think that our governor would say something like that as the U.S. economy is spinning around the drain? Wouldn't it be a good idea for you, Mr. Governor, to declare that we will now accept bullion and beagles and what have you that are made here out of our own gold and silver as currency? Because that dollar's failing. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's failing. It's not that it's going to fail. It's on its way out. And again, you're fumbling the ball. What are your handlers telling you to do? I wonder. Anyway, we move on. We got guys who are so wimpy that after basic and AIT, and now basic and AIT is stretched out for one station unit training for the Army. It's sometimes over 20 months or 20 weeks. And you got guys that graduate that and still can't pass a PT test. And a lot of that's because we have wimpy drill sergeants. In the Marine Corps, if you want to be a drill instructor, you have to volunteer. In the Army, it's an assignment. I had that assignment. I turned it down because I had just left being an ROTC instructor. But in the Army, you're tasked. It's like a punishment. I say you should have to ask for it, and there should have to be a board that you stand in front of, and if you ain't big and scary and intimidating, you're not getting the job. I had a drill sergeant when I went through the engineer course back in '84, and he is the biggest wimp I ever saw. Women, you're not even coming close to the standard. And they lie to you, ladies and gentlemen, say, well, the women are making the standard. See, this girl here, she got 100%. Yeah, 100% of the women's standard, but it's nowhere near the men's standard. And when they tried to make it one standard, they saw that none of the women were making the standard, and a lot of the men weren't making the standard. So they said, okay, well, we're going to have to change it back. Instead of having a higher standard, they just dropped the standard, so everybody looks like they're passing. Guess who is not going to notice that or care about that? That Chinese soldier that is shooting at you, because he's trained to kill you. Same with that Iranian, Russian to a lesser degree, North Korean, yeah. Let's talk about equipment for a little bit. You know, the basic rifle of the U.S. Army and the Marines hasn't changed since 66, 67, somewhere in there. The M16, which developed into the M16A2, or A1, A2, A3, I don't think it ever went that far. Now we got the M4 carbine, which is a good carbine, and it's better than that original gun, that original rifle. In fact, I have an AR-15. Tomorrow there'll probably be somebody out here to try to take it from me. It's one of the most popular weapons in the world, especially in our side of the world. But there are better guns out there. And they have caseless ammo. You know, when my son joined the Rangers, I said, son, they're going to teach you bayonet fighting. I said, but when you get down to Fort Lewis, which is where he was born, I said, I'm going to send you, I'm going to pay for it myself. I'm going to send you to Seattle. There's a medieval sword fighting school there. And I said, the reason why, if you take that M4 carbine by the buttstock and you've got an M9 bayonet on the end of that thing and it's razor sharp, you have a broadsword. And if you can swing that thing like a medieval knight, it'll do you a lot more good than it would close-in fighting with a bayonet. You hit a man in the chest with that, you'll split him open like a watermelon. He ain't going to come back for seconds. But we don't think that way. We don't train to fight in the Arctic. When I was stationed Charlie Airborne 4th and 23rd, we were trained for guys who had just come back from Vietnam just less than 10 years earlier. And that's good, because these people, you Vietnam veterans out there, you are the heroes of my generation of soldier. And someday I'm going to tell you just how much I mean that. But I mean it from the bottom of my heart. We looked up to you guys like you walked on water. No matter what the hippies said. I didn't like them that much either. But we trained to fight here like you were trained to fight in Vietnam. And in the summer, that makes sense, because whereas you fought in the swamps, we got muskeg. You had jungles, we have forests. But you didn't have that much snow in Vietnam, I'm guessing. And we altered our training for that. But we need to rethink the way we do things like that. We need to start, you go to that grunt on the ground, that E4, E5, and say, what do we need to do to make your job better and to enable you to more easily win in combat? I've got a whole bunch of ideas of my own we'll go into sometime, but maybe I won't go into all of it tonight. Now, Dan Sullivan, I'm not his biggest fan, but I'll tell you, one thing that he did do right was when he called the heads of the military in and said, prepare for Arctic warfare. Prepare for war in the Arctic. The Chinese are doing it. They're not even an Arctic country. The Russians are doing it. We're not. So the Army said, oh, okay, we're going to have a new airborne division. They brought in the 11th Division. They brought it back, had been out of business since, I think, the early 60s. I think they went out. Old Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone, he was in the 11th in World War II. After the war, he tested parachutes for $50 a jump, and he tested one that actually killed 2 or 3 other guys, but not him. Anyway, it's a side. But they brought back the 11th Airborne Division. First time we've had 2 airborne divisions in the Army since 1975. So we were told. It was a lie. The 11th Airborne Division took the brigade that was out here, that was the 4th Brigade of the 25th Division. They were airborne, it's an airborne brigade. And they turned them into one of the brigades of the 11th Airborne Division. Then they took the Stryker Brigade up at Wainwright and just turned it into an air assault division, air mobile, air assault. Well, that's not an airborne division. You have 2 brigades. One of them's airborne, one's air assault. And you don't have a division. You've got 2/3 of a division. Now, if they ask me, what would you do differently, Bruce? I'll tell you what I would do, because here's the thing. Having an air assault brigade, that's cool if you're within a couple of 100 miles of the airfield. But helicopters don't have that much range unless they're able to aerial refuel, and we're getting there. We're not there yet, and the Army just bought the replacement for the Black Hawk helicopter, and they bought the wrong replacement. Can you imagine that the Army might do something dumb in procurement? When they bought the Osprey back, 25 years ago, we called it a death trap. They said, well, it's perfect for special operations and for Marines. You can't get a Marine squad in that thing. You can't get a Special Forces team in that thing. And it was crashing left and right. There was a helicopter put forward that had counter-rotating blades, one right on top of the other, had the same footprint as the UH-60 Blackhawk, and it was the fastest chopper out there. That thing could go over 300 miles per hour or 300 knots because you don't have to worry about the tail rotor because you have forward moving props all the time. But they didn't buy that one, of course. Somebody paid somebody under the table. I don't care if you say they didn't, you're lying. Yeah, you did. Somebody got paid off. You don't think about the soldier. You never go to the guy on the ground and ask him what he needs. You tell him what you think he needs. And then you build a C-17 or a C-5 that can carry an M1 tank, maybe 2 M1 tanks, but you can't airdrop them. Say, well, Bruce, that's ridiculous. You can't drop an M1 tank. Yeah, you can. I know how to. The Russians know how to. They know how to aerial drop them. And I could show you. In fact, I do in my books. Now, we had 82nd, they used to, LAPES, they called it a LAPES, that's a low-altitude parachute extraction system, where they'd come in low over the drop zone, kick a parachute out, and it would drag out a Sheridan tank, and it would slide to a stop and then go off. But it was a light-skinned tank, and it was basically used for reconnaissance, and it would get you killed in combat, probably. But they were tough dudes, and they'd used it anyway. But if I had my way, this entire division would be airborne, air assault, and rough terrain. Rough terrain is you have the cage over your face. I was in 27th Engineers. We were rough terrain. And my last team in Special Forces, we were rough terrain. And you purposely jumped into the trees. Why is this essential for Alaska? Because this is a great big place without a lot of drop zones. And if you go where the enemy is, you don't go where you wish they were. And if you have to drop a brigade of guys into combat an oncoming enemy, and the best place you can go is covered with trees, you better be prepared for it. And we don't do that, but we can. We can train a rough terrain. You train a guy for rough terrain in a single week. We need to do that. Is shark attacks gone? Kids show up at basic training and they're too fat. In one of my books, I talked about a thing, and I was a chubby teenager myself. Luckily, I had hit my growing spurt, and I was scrawny by the time I joined the Army. I was tall and thin. But you have a lot of kids that are fat, and they really would love to serve. But they know they can't because they're overweight. And in one of my books, they do this. I'm going to try to wrap this up here in a little bit. But one of the things they do, they have a fat camp where here's your barracks. Your mess hall's a mile and a half away. So you get up in the morning, you have formation, you do some PT. Nothing terrible because you're bringing these kids along. You're not trying to make soldiers out of them yet. You're just trying to make them thin people. And they do their PT, hit the shower, and they march a mile and a half to the mess hall, a mile and a half back. Train, march back for lunch, back. Train some more, march there for dinner, march back. And when you go in there, you have things like no yolk omelets, as much as you can eat. Turkey bacon, as much as you can eat. And like rye toast or dark toast, that kind of stuff. Grapefruit. And any kind of unsweetened stuff you want to drink. At dinner time, you got halibut and you got, you'd have to raise them special. I would eat moose, but you can't have that many moose out there, especially in the lower 48, but you can eat moose and lose weight. But the bottom line is you have all the food they can eat, but it's stuff that you can't gain weight eating. And you're marching 9 miles a day, every single day, and you're pouring off the weight to the tune of about 5 pounds a week. At the end of the training, however long you have to be there to lose the weight, that's how long you're there. And then you're fit to go to basic and AIT. How many kids do you know that are fat and out of shape that would love to have an opportunity like that where they had somebody over them helping them along? We need tanks and APCs that'll run on the snow. Say, well, that's impossible, Bruce. Is it? Let's do a little simple math here. And you do the math. I'm not going to do it for you. I've already done it in my books. But you take a machine. Let's say it's airdroppable. It's 10 feet wide, but it's got tracks that are like snowcat tracks. And it has more tracks that are 5 feet wide, and they're up on the side of the machine. It hits the ground, they project down onto the ground hydraulically. Now you got 20 feet wide by 30 feet long, and the thing weighs 32 tons. If you run the math on that, you've got about 1.5 pounds, I think, per square inch on the snow. They'll ride right up on top of the snow. It can be done, but we don't think that way. We think about it backwards. We say, we've designed this airplane. Now give me a really junky piece of junk tank or something to drop out of it that'll be really, really light so it can get people killed more easily. I've designed skis and snowshoes that you can put away in your rucksack. I won't tell you anything about them. I'm still developing them. You'll see them soon enough. We need better boots. We need better rucks. Up here in the Arctic, there's a guy invented a rucksack he called the Mule. And it sits on your shoulders and there's a wheel behind you. And you could carry twice as much weight with it. Well, if you did that in the Arctic and had like a little sled on the bottom of that thing, you could carry all the Arctic gear that you need. And you could have it where you could pull a couple of lanyards and it breaks the bottom part loose, and you just have the absolute bare essentials on your back in case you get into trouble and you have to dee-dee-mow and get out of a situation. We can do those things. Better boots, better Arctic gear all around, because you got to have certain things. Because in the Arctic, up here in the middle of the winter, you lay down to sleep. If you can't get warm, you're going to wake up dead the next day. We can't have that. By the way, let's talk about OPSEC. I had this kid the other day that got busted doing what, that Air Force Guard guy, and he goofed up. So did Hillary, with all of those emails that she let slide. I used to be our SpeakHat guy when I was in Okinawa. I was the SpeakHat custodian. That's a guy that takes care of the special category correspondence that comes in and out of the battalion. And we had anything from confidential up to top secret. And my office was behind a combination lock. And SpeakHat special category is if this team over here is planning something, they got a piece of paper, it just says confidential on it. And this guy has a top secret. Unless he has a need to see that, he don't get to see it. And I was the guy that had to guard it in that regard. And that's my staff job for about 6 months. But if I had let that confidential piece of paper slip out of my control and it was revealed out there, I would have at least gotten an Article 15. Had I inadvertently let a piece of secret or top secret stuff slip out, I would have gone to Leavenworth. When Bergdahl went traitor, he was a traitor. He committed treason. He got 4 good men killed trying to bring him back. And Obama treated him like a hero. You know what they used to do to traitors? They would tie you to a post, blindfold you, offer you a cigarette, and then shoot you. We don't do things like that anymore, and we need to get back to it, frankly. When you join the military, you give up a lot of your constitutional rights. You're not under civil law. You're under the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And when you raise your hand, you say, I solemnly swear or affirm, you will follow the UCMJ. And you'll fall under the UCMJ. Deal with it. If you can't handle it, don't join. Guess we're gender norming and wokeism and pampering school kids and pampering soldiers and gender switching and all that kind of junk. Guess where that's not happened? I can name 4 places very quickly. I can name them in alphabetical order. There's China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. Now, the leaders of Iran, I don't know that guy. North Korea and Russia, they got a nut job in charge. But guess who's not nutty out of those 4? Xi Jinping. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's manipulating all the others. If you think that Russia and Ukraine has anything to do with Russia and Ukraine, you're being naive. Has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with China and Taiwan. And all these Chinese that are coming into this country across that southern border, 3,500 last month in a single month. Extrapolate that out to all the months that Biden's been in office, and you have over 50,000 people. That's 3 divisions, folks. In my books, I talk about the Chinese putting in guerrillas to conduct special operations in Alaska to draw our attention off of Taiwan. And I wrote that book 12 years ago. You say, Bruce, do you think that they're going to infiltrate? They already infiltrated. They're here right now. They're here now. All with the approbation of this president, this so-called president. Russia's only a threat because they got nukes, because their army's a joke. And I said that a year and a couple of months ago when they invaded Ukraine. I said, they're going to get the snot beat out of them. And that's what you're seeing over there. I suspect that Xi Jinping sits there and he probably has sore ribs from laughing at this country. The whole world. You see what's happening to the dollar? Our dollar's in the tank. And still, here's Dunleavy up here, doop. Not even thinking about saying we need to have the dollar or the silver and the gold as our currency up here. You're going to regret it, Mr. Governor. Alaska might be too late already, but I don't believe in too late. World War II broke out. We had no army to speak of. And within 4 years, we fielded the greatest army in the history of mankind. I think we had 4 airborne divisions in that army. We had 101st, the 82nd, the 17th, and the 11th, and it seemed like there was another one. A bunch of airborne brigades and other airborne outfits. The Marines grew. I think they had 5 divisions, at least 4. Now we have skeletons of military. We don't have the real thing anymore. In that war, we built brand new things that had never been imagined. Look at the nuclear bomb. It went from, this is a concept, to we have built the facilities to make that thing. I had an uncle who worked at Oak Ridge, to we're dropping bombs on the enemy. And we did that to break their will, by the way. We did that in less than 4 years, but now you try to field something new, you offer it up, it'll take 20 years before it's ever fielded, and it'll be outdated by the time it gets there. But people were made out of better stuff back then. They were made out of better stuff in World War II than I was when I joined in the 80s. Now, here's some questions. Can we do it again? Can we fix our broken military? And those of you who say our military is doing just fine, just go away. Just unfriend me. Don't follow me. I don't even want to hear from you. I'm not even going to entertain an argument with you because you don't know what you're talking about. Our military is a joke. It is a joke. And there are a lot of people out there that I had somebody try this and, well, you're not being patriotic. Yeah, I am. I'm being extremely patriotic because I love our military. All branches. I love mine especially. I'm a career soldier, but I love them all. And I don't mean I like them. I mean tears in the eyes, lump in the throat, proud of them. But what we've got now, I'm not proud of that. And we got to fix it. And it's not a matter of can we fix it. It's a matter of must we fix it. And yeah, we must. Mattis was a letdown. I don't care what he did. He earned a Silver Star back in Vietnam. I don't care. What he did 50 years ago, that ain't helping me a bit today. I had a feeling that, and I believe I was right, when Trump had been sworn in for his second tour of duty, he was going to fix our broken, woke military, get away from the political correctness. In fact, he promised Jerry Boykin he would. I saw that on TV. And Jerry Boykin, God bless you, brother. Man, you're such an inspiration to me. I watched your testimony, and it made me cry. You've always been a hero of mine, all you guys in Delta Force. I would love to see you, General Boykin, as the Secretary of Defense, but we'll see what's said later, and if the Lord allows it. Folks, what I'm not doing to make myself popular. A lot of stuff that I've said today is going to make me extremely unpopular. I'm fine with that. But I'm going to tell you the truth if it kills me. I'm going to tell you the truth if they hunt me down and shoot me. And I suspect that'll happen. That's probably how I'll go out. Because I'll be calling people out by name. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid. I was willing to go over to Iraq and die for a bunch of people that hated me, to die for their freedom. Do you think you're going to intimidate me and scare me away? If you agree with me, share, like, subscribe, all that groovy stuff. We need all the help and we need all the exposure we can get. I know this has been some rough stuff to swallow today, and it might have got a little bit dry for you. But folks, if we don't fix our military, we're done as a nation. Traditionally, that's the one thing that our federal government could do right, was our military, and they can't even do that anymore. Pray for this nation. May God bless you. May he bless these glorious states, this country of ours, and may he bless my beloved Alaska. And with that, I hand you back over to the Gray Wolf.
It was another fine number on WLDO Radio, Waldo Radio, right here in Palmer, Alaska. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to the Wolf now. We can do better than we've been doing. Until we meet again, remember,